This is India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Let's get you the headlines this evening. First up, India rises to the third most powerful country in Asia. India overtakes Japan as far as Lowy Institute's latest Asia Power report is concerned. Israel launches further strikes on southern Lebanon. Nearly 560 people have been killed in Lebanon from the Israeli strikes that have been taking place all of this week. Bangladesh interim leader Mohammed Yunus calls for repatriation of Rohingyas. Mohammed Yunus says that there's now need for urgent repatriation of Rohingyas, and that's the only solution possible. US pledges a little under $200 million in fresh humanitarian aid for the Rohingya crisis. China opposes provision of weapons by US to Taiwan in the region. United States is set to provide an additional military aid of $567 million to Taiwan. On to our first story on India Global today. It is about the latest as far as the Lowy Institute's ranking is concerned. It puts now India at the third place in terms of the power rankings. And if one were to go by the report, it clearly says that India has been doing very well when it comes to the economy, military capability, as well as diplomatic positioning of India around the world. And I think that's something that's extremely important. There are several key measures and parameters of assessing the power dynamics of countries in Asia, and while India ranks third, parameters like the military capability, diplomatic resilience are areas, and diplomatic influence where India has really grown in the last couple of years. There are certain areas where more work needs to be done, which includes economic interdependence. But the question we are asking is that as the leader of the global south, where does this take India from here on? The $10 trillion trajectory that we're talking about, will it now come sooner? Also the dynamics within Asia, how can India now do power projection both in the Indian Ocean region and far wide is the larger question. Let's open this up to my guests this evening on India Global. First up, we have Mr. Yogesh Gupta and we have Mr. Mukesh Mohan. All right, Mr. Gupta, let me start with you, sir. Some of these numbers that have come in for India, they are very heartening, promising, but at the same time in line with all that India has been able to achieve in the at the global scale and at the global stage in the last couple of years.
Oh, yes. It's a very important report, and I think it acknowledges for the first time in a very clear and bold manner that India has made huge progress. Primarily, our economy has done extremely well, whereas the economy of all other major countries, big countries, they are either not growing or just growing by very little percentage. India has been able to achieve something like 7 to 8% growth annually. And right now we have achieved a size of 4 trillion, and it is expected that, by 2030, we might be there around with around $10 trillion. And India is going to have the next 2 decades are going to be India's decades, because we are going to have huge economic growth in this period. Now, once you have the economic power, it is possible for you to translate the economic power into military power or technological power or other things. And once you have all these purposes, correspondingly, your political power also expands at the same time. So, what the Lowy Institute has said is that since India's economic power is going to increase immensely, we have a stable climate. And our country is making rapid progress on the technological front.
Yes.
Prime Minister has put India in terms of acquiring.
Let's come to the economy part of it in just a bit. I'm quoting from the report, which says that India's diplomatic influence also rose in 2024 Asia Power Index. Experts surveyed praised Prime Minister Modi's global leadership and strategic ambition more highly. India increased its tempo of diplomatic activity in 2023, participating in the 6th highest number of dialogues with Asia PAR Index countries, and suggests that India's strategy of non-alignment has benefited its global standing. How do you see this, Mr. Mohan, in terms of the larger impact from here on, and also testimony to India's foreign policy in the last decade or so, or definitely in the last couple of years for sure, in terms of greater engagement, something that the report also validates?
I'll put it in something in a very different way. Perhaps we don't require these types of report. Why I'm saying this thing, we know all these things, in fact, and we know much better than this. And the reason for this, in fact, see, the global economy in past 10 years, if you see, is expanding at the rate of around 35%. What is the Indian economy? Indian economy is growing in past 10 years at the rate of expanded about 90%. And what are the regions? Regions are, the government has taken a lot of initiative like fiscal management, strong exports from the country, FDI inflow, infrastructure investment, household investment, Make in India, PLI, GST, then RERA, and then insolvency and bankruptcy code. How many startups we have which have become the
I know
unicorn?
you're quickly touching upon all important schemes, but this is not about
Yeah.
rattling off schemes. This is about, I know, there are important reports that come out. This is Lowy Institute is a very credible think tank in Australia, which is why we are talking about it. But I'm going to now talk about the specific aspect of what this report says. A large gap remains. Mr. Gupta, I'm going to ask you this. A large gap remains between the narrative of India rising and the reality of its limited power projection in Asia. Essentially saying that there is a lot more potential that India has, and probably the next couple of years we should all be able to see some of that being put to action. Mr. Gupta.
No, I 100% agree with you that perhaps maybe that full potential we are yet to achieve actually. And the future is, I suppose, definitely based on this report also, future is of India. And we have a lot of potential with us. And I'm sure that whatever targets we have achieved for USD 5 trillion economy or 10 trillion economy, we will definitely achieve it much before the target being set by ourselves.
Right. Mr. Gupta.
So you see, we have to translate our economic power into other forms of power. Like, for instance, China has undertaken a massive program of military modernization. Now, India has started correspondingly a huge program of indigenous militarization. Where we are trying to manufacture our own fighter aircraft, where we are trying to manufacture our own aircraft carriers, our own frigates, and so on. Our own missiles, our own drones, our own autonomous systems. And once, you have all this, then you are able to, extend your political influence over vast distances. Right now, we have 2 aircraft carriers. There are plans to acquire more. Similarly, there are plans to acquire new light tanks, for the mountainous terrain. So once we are, once we have acquired all these, made all these military advances, then we will be able to expand our power. And correspondingly, on the diplomatic front also, as as the report says, India is today a member of several different political groups. On one side we have Quad, on other side we have got BRICS, we have got SCO, and so on. And more and more countries, are in the global south, for instance, are looking to have closer partnership with India. So, once our economic power, our technological power, our military power
Right.
expands, we see India playing a much bigger role. And at places much farther away, at distances away, from India, in the other oceans like China
Right.
and so on.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And as we wrap up, let me just quickly tell our viewers that the other thing that stood out in this report is also that it said about India's economic influence in Asia being a mixed bag. And I think that's also because our economic interdependence with ASEAN and the larger Asian region can increase more. Yes, we said no to RCEP, but that doesn't mean we need to say no to more trading opportunities and more bilateral, multilateral trading opportunities with this region. With that, I'm completely out of time. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me in this edition of India Global. Slipping into a very short break, we come back on the other side and talk more about Bangladesh and the fact that its leader has had enough with the Rohingya crisis. Can Mohammad Yunus solve that, find a solution? We come back and talk more on that after this short break.
Bingo lovers, it's time for a close encounter with Bingo Aliens. Visit bingoaliens.com/bingo for a cosmic range of bingo games. 75-ball bingo, even 90-ball bingo. All from a galaxy far away, direct to you. Taking bingo to another dimension at bingoaliens.com/bingo.
Lighten the load for the rest of the year with free EE broadband for 3 months, so you can keep the family connected with ultra-fast speeds of 150 meg powered by BT, meaning everybody can work, game, and stream nonstop with absolutely nothing to pay until December. So switch today. It's easier than ever before. No wonder broadband switchers choose EE. Search EE broadband deals.
Do you need to borrow money? Then you've come to the right place. Everyday Loans. Representative APR 99.9%. Apply now at everydayloans.co.uk.
We know that living with diabetes can make daily life a challenge, and we're here to help.
I felt very low with the diagnosis and very lonely as well and embarrassed.
I think people don't necessarily realise the impact that being diabetic can have on you and the amount of extra decisions you have to make a day through carb counting every single thing you eat.
Day-to-day living with diabetes is really difficult. So Diabetes UK has made my life easier every day.
If you're struggling with the everyday challenges diabetes can bring, maybe it's time to become a Diabetes UK member. Call 0800 035 7601 or go online to become a member. And for just £3 a month, you'll get a welcome pack and a practical guide tailored to your type of diabetes and a copy of Balance magazine 4 times a year.
Balance magazine has been very good in giving me tips to manage my diabetes on a day-to-day basis.
Plus regular email updates with the latest diabetes news and special discounts.
One of the things I was recommended to do was exercise. What motivated me was my love of dance, and I got that back.
Join a community that really understands. Call 0800 035 7601 or go online to become a member for just £3 a month.
I would recommend Diabetes UK to anyone with diabetes. Join up, become part of a community, get that support that you need.
The $3.95 trial set with our sharpest ever Truman razor. Get started now at harrys.com. Harry's. Feel good, fellas.
Welcome back. You're watching India Global with me, Gaurie Dwivedi. Shifting focus now to Bangladesh, and the latest coming in there is that at the sidelines of the UNGA, Mohammad Yunus, who made his first trip to the UNGA as the interim advisor to the interim government, did reach out and met US President Joe Biden as well as former President Bill Clinton. Of course, there's also assurances coming in from America in terms of greater aid and also ensuring that Mohammad Yunus has support of America at a time when he's promised reform, though he hasn't promised a path towards restoring democracy. How does that add up? What does it mean for India? Let's get in Mohammad Ghazali to fill us in with the very latest. Go ahead, Mohammad, tell us.
So this meeting is very significant considering that Bangladesh has got a new government after the ouster of Sheikh Hasina, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, and how US has shown its interest in stabilizing democracy as well as providing aid for Bangladesh. Because you know, if you see all the neighboring countries, be it Maldives, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and even Bangladesh, until the economy stabilizes there, there is always an unrest or a chance of unrest being created there. So Bangladesh's interim advisor of the interim government, Mr. Yunus, met with Mr. Biden. He also introduced those student protesters, so the leaders who led this protest against Sheikh Hasina, and perhaps Mr. Biden was very impressed with the kind of protest led to the ouster of Sheikh Hasina from Bangladesh. But the key center frame of this entire meeting was the aid. Mr. Yunus was promised that United States will keep providing aid to Bangladesh to stabilize its economy, because until the economy stabilizes in Bangladesh, Mr. Yunus has a lot to do, because elections are still pending there. Mr. Yunus had also promised after taking over as the advisor of the interim government that he will see multiple and major reforms in the country, after which he will go for elections. So to get those reforms, perhaps the major reforms is required in reviving the economy. Also, it also shows the kind of interest US is showing after facing allegations that they were the ones who engineered Sheikh Hasina's ouster from Bangladesh. But now they are also showing keen interest in stabilizing democracy there, providing aid to Bangladesh, and also a very key US State Department official, Mr. Donald Lu, had visited Bangladesh just earlier this month. So a kind of prominence being given to Mr. Yunus, who's its first meeting, overseas trip for Mr. Yunus, who has gone to US to attend the UNGA session, and also met not only Mr. Biden but also Bill Clinton.
Yes, indeed. There were lots of unsubstantiated claims that it was America that was behind Sheikh Hasina's ouster. In the background of that, this meeting has taken place. Mohammed, thanks much for filling us in with all those details. In fact, staying with Bangladesh, well, Mohammed Yunus has also made a statement about repatriation of Rohingyas. Remember, there are 1.2 million Rohingyas who are in Bangladesh, and it seems that one of the issues that the advisor right now wants to address is to have some sort of a permanent solution as far as repatriation of Rohingyas is concerned. Mohammed Yunus, who right after taking over as the advisor to the interim government, in his first speech did not say about Rohingyas being repatriated, and he's saying so right now. What has changed in the last 5 weeks is a question that we will ask. More importantly, is this a possible solution that can be executed? What lies ahead? Security implications of 1.2 million Rohingyas being repatriated to neighboring countries, whether it is their security implication for India and of course Thailand, besides of course for Bangladesh as well. All right, let's get in. My guest joining me this evening on this debate. We have Salim Samad, as well as we also have Shamsher Chaudhary joining us, who's a former Foreign Secretary, both joining us from Dhaka. In fact, Mr. Chaudhary, let me start with you, sir. As things stand right now, this has been a simmering issue for several years now, not just for Bangladesh, which is of course at the receiving end of a much larger amount of displaced Rohingya refugees, but also for India as well. And the fact that this is now being discussed at the highest level, Mohammed Yunus is now wanting to create some sort of a global diplomatic consensus around it. How do you see this? His comments at the UNGA.
Thank you very much for including me in this dialogue on a very, very important, significant issue, not just for Bangladesh, mainly for Bangladesh, but also I think other neighboring countries. And you have very rightly mentioned India, Thailand, and even China. They're also having a problem. You see, this is not the first time that the Rohingya crisis has been declared in a UN forum. It has been discussed before. There were statements and there were proposed resolutions, which unfortunately were vetoed by China and some even in the case of Russia. I think not just Professor Yunus, the rest of the world cannot or overemphasize the seriousness of the problem. And you rightly said 1.2 million. What you could not add is it's 1.2 million and counting. There are thousands of children, babies being born every day, and that number is growing. Now, when Mr. Donald Lu was here, one of the things that was discussed with him and our Foreign Secretary, Mr. Jasimuddin, that we need to we're very concerned with the Rohingya crisis, and we need to look at the root causes of the Rohingya crisis. The root causes lies in Myanmar and the Myanmar military junta.
But 7 years have gone by, not a single Rohingya has been repatriated. As I said, Bangladesh bears brunt of it, some of the other neighboring countries also, but not a single Rohingya has been repatriated back to Myanmar. It's been 7 years. The reason why I'm asking you and saying this is because, we need a plan in place. One is an aspiration, one is a goal, but second is the plan to execute such an aspiration.
Well, the plan, everything lies in what happens inside Myanmar. Is Myanmar ready? Is Myanmar in a situation to take back even one Rohingya? They are not. The present military junta in Myanmar is not in a position to take back even one. And that's why this military junta is being discarded not just by Bangladesh, but even by its ASEAN member countries. Many of the meetings of ASEAN countries, the Myanmar military leader is not invited because of the situation there. And now the military junta, actually, its writ is limited only to the capital and surrounding areas. It doesn't have control of large parts of Myanmar where different groups are now operating, armed groups are operating, seeking independence, seeking, not independence only, but also seeking separate autonomous status within a federal Myanmar. I was in Bangkok quite recently. I had talked to some very important, I was on a private visit though, but because I have some friends very high up in the military government, in the Thai government, they said that unless, and I'm quoting, I wouldn't name them, but they said unless there is a regime change and a federal Myanmar evolves, Rohingya will not be repatriated.
So then is it a non-starter? Let me ask this to Salim Samad. Is this really a non-starter? Because, what Mohammed Yunus is trying to do is build some sort of a global diplomatic consensus on an issue where most parties feel the same. There is no divergent views. But the fact is, how does Bangladesh go about executing this at the time when the prospect of executing such a plan looks fairly bleak?
Thank you, Gaurie, for having me on the show. First of all, it has to be understood that the Arakan army, the very armed group, has already taken over 80% of the Arakan province. So that is one of the reasons. And as our predecessor has mentioned about the government. So first of all, the Arakan army as well as the military ruler in Myanmar has no capacity to have them return. First of all, the UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, is totally responsible for the repatriation. And UNHCR has already mentioned with the Bangladesh government several times that unless Myanmar guarantees citizenship rights of the Rohingya, the freedom of movement, the access to livelihood, healthcare and education, which is totally banned. So you cannot send somebody who will not get education, healthcare, and blah, 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 work and movement, or even citizenship right. So they are nobody in that country. At least they are refugee in Bangladesh. But when they return to Myanmar, Myanmar is already troubled, and Arakan army also doesn't want the refugees from Bangladesh to be repatriated. They're also having trouble with the Rohingyas, even in Myanmar.
Okay, this is an important point, but let me tell you this. On the 18th of August, when Mr. Mohammed Yunus made his first major government policy address, and I'm quoting what he said regarding Rohingyas. He said that his government will continue to support the million-plus Rohingya people sheltered in Bangladesh. He says we need the sustained efforts of the international community, but we will continue to support. So I want to ask you this, that what has changed in the last 1 month from what he said when he took over and said that he supports to now when he wants to build a consensus as far as the repatriation of Rohingyas is concerned. Is that a domestic concern and a domestic constituency that he's trying to address here? And hence he's making these statements?
So nothing has changed. I mean, if you look into what he has mentioned on, as you has quoted, and whatever he said at the UN, there's nothing, the policy has not changed. Bangladesh definitely had already welcomed this 1.2 million. So where are they going to throw? They cannot throw it in Bay of Bengal. Number one. Number two is repatriation is an issue that has to be continuously a diplomatic effort that has to be
Right.
undertaken by the global leaders.
Yes.
obviously
Okay.
he's
So let's
addressing the
quickly get
global
in.
leaders.
Let's quickly get in, Mr. Chaudhary, as well. I'm running out of time. Yes, sir. I just read out the statement that Ms. Mohammed Yunus made on the 18th of August, and that we are, of course, debating the statement that he made at the UNGA yesterday. There is a slight difference in terms of the urgency regarding addressing the issue. Why do you think that urgency is there?
I think the urgency is there because it is becoming almost unbearable for Bangladesh to continue to hold them. And the idea that why Professor Yunus is raising this is to keep on drawing global attention that this is a very, very, very serious issue. And unless there is a effort by everyone involved, including India, including China, ASEAN countries, Arab countries, everybody, we cannot keep on holding. It is a huge burden on us economically. We did not welcome them. We gave them shelter because they were being pushed out of the country. They are disenfranchised in Myanmar. Even Aung San Suu Kyi, who holds the Nobel Peace Prize, she did nothing about it. She absolutely ignored the whole issue herself. Now that she has been thrown out by the government, she's not a factor anymore. It is the military who have to. So, but the fact remains that whether it's Professor Yunus today, somebody else tomorrow, previously former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina also kept on referring this at the UN, that this has to be part of a global effort. Bangladesh alone cannot do it. This is what we are reiterating everywhere.
Absolutely. 1.2 million people who can't return to their homes at a time when Bangladesh itself, the host country right now, is facing tremendous economic, social, political turmoil, is the key question. What happens? Can a possible global consensus be built? Will Mr. Yunus have this as one of his lasting legacies? Is a question that we'll come back and address in coming days. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me in this edition of India Global. And with that, it's a wrap from me. Thanks for watching.